Hi, this is NextGen Picks. Let me be straight with you. A lot of people are unknowingly walking into a bad deal. You drop $2,000 on a premium 4K TV. You plug in your PS5 or your powerful PC and think you've reached peak setup status. Then it hits you. That noticeable input lag, movements feel heavier than they should, the smart interface stutters like it's running on decade-old hardware. Or maybe you chose the opposite path. You grabbed a gaming monitor that's fast. Sure, but it's so small and dim it looks ridiculous sitting in a living room, like a glowing sticker on the wall. And the tech industry keeps pushing the same lie. You need two displays, one serious screen for work and gaming, and another one just for the couch. That idea is dead. In 2026, the line between TVs and monitors hasn't blurred. It's gone, completely erased. I've spent the last month testing the newest generation of hybrid displays. And I don't say this casually. Some of these make traditional TVs look outdated. But before we tear apart the spec sheet nonsense these brands keep feeding you, do me a quick favor. Hit like, subscribe. We don't take brand deals here, which means I can tell you honestly which of these so-called pro displays are nothing more than overpriced plastic. Your support keeps this testing real and independent. Now let's talk about the so-called TV killer that actually earns the title. And to understand that, we need to ask a simple question. Why are people even considering replacing a TV with a monitor in 2026? For years, the answer was obvious. TVs were big and affordable, monitors were fast and expensive. Couch gaming meant a TV. Desk gaming meant a monitor. That logic just collapsed. The US market has hit a strange tipping point. The TV arms race has stalled. Manufacturers are obsessed with AI upscaling, smart assistants, and gimmicks nobody asked for, while ignoring the one thing gamers and power users actually care about: pure panel performance. Most flagship TVs in 2026 still top out at 120 Hz, maybe 144 Hz if you're willing to pay extra for a gaming label. Meanwhile, the monitors we're looking at today are pushing 240 Hz, 360 Hz, and beyond, with response times that make even fast IPS TVs feel ancient, like early plasma panels from the 90s. But here's the real turning point. For a long time, the biggest reason you couldn't use a monitor as a TV was simple. They were dumb. No apps, no streaming, turn off your PC, and the screen was useless. That era is over. Enter the Samsung Odyssey OLED G9 G95 SD. On paper, this thing alone should make you question why you even own a living room TV. This isn't a monitor with a few apps thrown on as an afterthought. It's a 49-inch, 32.9 super ultra-wide monster. Essentially two 27-inch 1440p displays fused into a single seamless curved panel. And it runs full Tizen OS. That means when you're done working all day or you finally log off Cyberpunk, you don't need to swap inputs. You don't need another device. You don't even need a PC turned on. The screen just becomes your TV. You just hit home and you're in a full-blown smart TV environment. But here is where the marketing fluff meets the NextGen Picks reality check. Samsung calls this a G-Sync compatible masterpiece with a 0.03 millisecond response time. And look, the speed is real. When you're playing at 240 Hz on a QD OLED panel, motion blur basically ceases to exist. It's eerie. You move the mouse and the world moves with you in a way that feels like you're looking through a window, not at a screen. However, let's talk about the US Amazon reality. Right now, you can find this unit for around $1,240. That's a lot of money. For that same price, you could buy a 65 in high-end mini LED TV. So, why would you choose the smaller, wider monitor? It comes down to the subpixel layout. If you've ever tried to use a TV as a monitor, you know the pain. Text looks fringy. You see little green or red shadows around the edges of your emails. It's subtle, but after 4 hours, your eyes feel like they've been rubbed with sandpaper. Samsung's 2026 G95 SD uses their Gen 2 QD OLED panel, which supposedly fixes this. I tested it. Is it better? Yes. Is it perfect? No. If you are a writer, a coder, or someone who stares at black text on a white background for 10 hours a day, you will still see a tiny bit of that OLED blur on fine fonts. But for 95% of people, this is the first time an OLED of this size has actually been productivity viable. But let's get into the truth bomb about the brightness. Samsung quotes peak brightness numbers that sound incredible. 1000 nits, 1500 nits. But you need to understand the ABL auto brightness limiter. Did you see that? That's the monitor protecting itself. OLEDs get hot. If the whole screen is bright white, it will dim itself down to about 250 nits to prevent the panel from literally cooking itself. A standard TV does this too, but usually much more gracefully. On the G9, it can be jarring. If you're a bright room owner, maybe your desk is right next to a massive window in a sunny California apartment, this monitor is going to struggle. You'll be fighting reflections despite the new glare-free matte coating. And while we're on the subject of things they don't tell you, let's talk about Dolby Vision. Samsung refuses to pay the licensing fee for Dolby Vision. They want you to use HDR10+. In the US, where almost every major streaming service, Netflix, Max, Apple TV+, defaults to Dolby Vision for their high-end cinematic content. This is a massive oversight. When you watch a movie on this TV replacement, you aren't getting the absolute best cinematic metadata. You're getting a close enough version for a $1,200 display that claims to replace your TV. That's a tough pill to swallow. But then you play a game. You fire up a title that supports 32:9 aspect ratio, like Microsoft Flight Simulator or Forza, and suddenly the lack of Dolby Vision doesn't matter. The HDR curve wraps around your peripheral vision. You aren't just looking at a game, you're inside it. The black levels are infinite. When you're flying over a city at night, the lights aren't just bright, they're piercing, while the shadows stay perfectly inkily black. No blooming, no grayish glow around white text like you see on every mini LED TV on the market. So, here's the bottom line on the G95 SD before we move to our next contender. It is the most complete TV killer on the market because of that T's integration. It feels like a TV, it acts like a TV, but it performs like a world-class esports display. But I want to hear from you. We're doing a massive dive today, and I'm covering 5 more models that might fit your desk or your budget a lot better than this $1,200 monster. Drop a comment below right now. What are you currently using? Are you a TV as a monitor person, or are you still rocking a 24-in panel from 2018? And more importantly, what's the one product you've been dying to see a real no BS review of? I read every single comment, and it's how I decide what we test next. All right, so the Samsung is the everything in the kitchen sink option, but what if you don't have 5 feet of desk space? What if you want something that actually fits in a normal room, but still gives you that OLED magic? If the Samsung is a luxury wide-body jet, this is a fighter cockpit. The LG UltraGear 45GS95QE is, quite frankly, the most aggressive display I have ever put on my desk. And I mean that literally. That 800R curve isn't just a feature, it's a lifestyle choice. If you sit more than 3 feet away, the image starts to look distorted. But if you sit right in the sweet spot, it's the most immersive gaming experience on the planet. Period. But here is the truth bomb the spec sheet hides. LG markets this as a WQHD masterpiece. In plain English, that's 3440 x 140. Now, on a 27-in monitor, that resolution looks sharp. On a 34, it's still great. But on a massive 45-in canvas, the PPI drops to about 84. I'm going to be real with you. If you're coming from a 4K TV, you will notice this. When you're reading text or looking at fine details in a strategy game, it's not going to have that retina sharpness. It's the trade-off for that insane 240 Hz speed and OLED contrast. LG is betting that you'll be so distracted by the sheer scale of the world wrapping around your head that you won't care about a bit of soft text. For most gamers, they're right. For anyone doing Excel, this monitor is a nightmare. And let's talk about that WOLED panel. LG uses a white subpixel to boost brightness, which is why this 2026 model hits about 275 nits in SDR, a huge jump over the older dimmer versions. But that white pixel can cause fringing on text. It makes the edges of letters look a little fuzzy. Again, it's the monitor versus TV compromise. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, Chris, I don't want a curved screen. I want a 4K TV that actually acts like a computer, then you're looking for the ASUS ROG Swift PG42UQ. This is a 42-in 4K OLED. On the surface, it looks like someone just took an LG C-Series TV and stuck a ROG logo on it. But that is where you'd be wrong. ASUS did something the TV manufacturers refused to do. They built in a massive custom heatsink. Why does that matter? Longevity. Heat is the #1 killer of OLEDs. It's what causes burn-in. By pulling heat away from the pixels, ASUS claims they can run this panel harder for longer without the risk of your Windows taskbar becoming a permanent ghost on your screen. But here's the insider quirk I found during testing. ASUS has a feature called uniform brightness. Remember how I said monitors usually dim themselves when a white window pops up? If you turn this feature on, the ASUS stops doing that. It locks the brightness at a consistent level around 200 nits. It's not blindingly bright, but it's stable. For work, it's a godsend. No more flashing brightness every time you switch from a dark game to a white Google Doc. However, the dirty little secret of the PG42UQ is the matte coating. This is the biggest debate in the community. Purists hate matte. They say it ruins the OLED inkiness. And look, if you're in a dark basement, the glossy TV will look better. But if you're in a typical US home office with a light behind you, that matte coating is the only thing standing between you and a headache. It's function over fashion. And for a desktop monitor, it makes sense. Just know what you're signing up for before you drop $1,100. But what if you aren't an OLED person? What if you have a room that's basically a greenhouse and you need raw melt your retina's power? That's where the Gigabyte Aorus FE43U comes in. This isn't an OLED. It's a VA panel with quantum dots, and it is a different beast entirely. While the OLEDs we just talked about struggle to hit 300 nits of full-screen brightness, this thing laughs at 700 nits and peaks at 1000 nits in HDR. And let's talk about the sound. Most monitors have speakers that sound like a bee in a tin can. The FE43U actually has decent audio. They call it space audio, and it's the only monitor on this list where you might actually skip buying a soundbar. It's loud, it's clear, and it has actual bass. But, and you knew there was a but, it's a VA panel. This is called black smearing. Because VA panels are slower at changing dark pixels to light pixels, you get this ghostly effect in dark scenes. If you're a competitive Valorant or Counter-Strike player, this monitor will drive you insane. But if you're playing Starfield or watching Dune, the contrast is so high and the brightness is so punchy that you might not even notice. Plus, it has a KVM switch. This is huge for the work-from-home crowd. You plug your mouse and keyboard into the monitor, and you can switch between your work laptop and your gaming PC with one button. No more swapping cables under your desk, like it's 2005. We've covered the Immersion King, the Reliable Professional, and the Bright Room Beast, but we're only halfway through. We still have the Budget Savior and the Verdict to get to. But I want to hear from you again. We're deep into the technical weeds here. Is there a specific monitor or a brand you feel like I'm being too hard on? Or maybe one you think I missed? Drop it in the comments. I'm building out the testing schedule for next month, and I want to know what you guys are actually shopping for. All right, let's get into part 3. Because for all the fancy OLED tech and a 1000 nit peaks, there is one category we haven't touched yet. The people who just want the best bang for the buck. If you want that 49 in experience, but you don't want to pay the Samsung tax, MSI has been doing something very interesting lately. If you've been watching the first 2 parts of this deep dive and thinking, Chris, the Samsung G9 looks amazing, but I don't need a TV remote, and I definitely don't want to pay a $400 premium for a smart OS I'll never use, then you need to look at the MSI MPG 491 CQP. This is the value king of the super ultra-wide world in 2026. MSI has basically taken the exact same QD OLED panel technology found in the high-end competition and stripped away the lifestyle fluff. What's left is a pure high-performance display that currently sits at about $849 on Amazon. Think about that. You're getting a 49-in OLED for nearly half of the price of some flagship TVs. But here is the insider detail they don't mention in the flashy trailers: the connectivity. While Samsung gives you a mini HDMI port, which is a pain for cable management, MSI gives you a full-size display port 1.4A, two full-bandwidth HDMI 2.1 ports, and a 90W USB-C port. If you're a professional who works on a laptop during the day and games on a desktop at night, this single cable solution is a game changer. It's the difference between a cluttered desk and a clean, minimalist setup. Now look at the curve. While the Samsung G9 uses a very aggressive 1000RR curve, the MSI uses an 1800R curve. Some people love the wraparound feel of 1000RR, but for productivity, things like video editing or spreadsheets, the 1800R curve is actually better. It feels more natural, like you're looking at two flat monitors placed side by side rather than sitting inside a tube. But MSI knows the #1 fear of every OLED buyer: burn-in. They've doubled down on what they call OLED Care 2.0. They aren't just using software tricks like pixel shift, they've actually attached a graphene film to the back of the panel connected to a custom heatsink. Because graphene is a better thermal conductor than almost anything else on Earth, it whisks heat away from the organic pixels much faster than a standard TV would. And here's the trust builder. MSI is currently offering a 3-year burn-in warranty in the US market. That is a massive statement of confidence. Most TVs will tell you that burn-in is user error and refuse to cover it. MSI is telling you to go ahead and use it. The trade-off? You're capped at 144 Hz. For most people, 144 Hz is plenty, but if you're a competitive gamer who needs that 240 Hz fluid motion, you might feel the difference. And as I mentioned, there are no smart features. If you want to watch Netflix, you need your PC or a console turned on. For me, that's a fair trade for saving $400. All right, we've looked at the giants, we've looked at these specialized TV killers. Now it's time to cut through the noise. Who should actually buy what? Because at the end of the day, your desk space and your wallet are the only things that matter. Category 1, the Couch-Toes Hybrid. If you want one screen that does it all, gaming at 240 Hz during the day and watching movies with a remote in your hand at night, the Samsung Odyssey OLED G9 G95 SD is your winner. It is the only monitor on this list that feels like a legitimate television replacement because it has the software to back it up. It's expensive. Yes, it has a Samsung tax, but in terms of functionality, nothing else touches it. Category 2, the Immersive Desk Purist. If you sit in a dark room and you want the screen to literally disappear into your peripheral vision, you want the LG UltraGear 45. That 800R curve is not a gimmick, it's an experience. Just remember my warning about the lower pixel density. If you do a lot of office work, those fuzzy letters are going to bother you after a while. Category 3, the Greenhouse Gamer. If your room has big windows and you can't control the light, avoid OLED. I know everyone says OLED is the best, but in a bright US living room, a dim OLED is a frustrating experience. You want the Gigabyte Aorus FV43. It's the mini LED equivalent of a sledgehammer. It's bright, it's punchy, and it doesn't care about your windows. Category 4, the Budget Professional. The MSI MPG 491 CQP is the one I would personally buy. It's the most logical choice. It gives you the infinite contrast of OLED, the 90W charging for your laptop, and a 3-year warranty for under $900. It's the sensible path in a world of $2,000 marketing hype. So here is the final verdict. Best overall, the Samsung Odyssey OLED G9 G95 SD. It's the only display that actually makes you feel like you don't need a TV. It's fast, it's smart, and it's beautiful. Best value, the MSI MPG 491 CQP. If you just want the panel and none of the fluff, this is the smartest way to spend your money in 2026. But I have to give a special mention to the LG C4 42-inch TV. If you're strictly a console gamer or a movie buff and you don't care about 240 Hz or ultra-wide formats, the LG C4 is still the king of the small screen living room. It's often cheaper, it has better image processing, and it supports every HDR format under the sun. Now for the truth bomb. Brands are desperate for you to keep buying 2 separate screens. They want you to have a work monitor and a home TV. Why? Because they can sell you 2 power supplies, 2 warranties, and 2 sets of plastic housings. They're banking on you being afraid of the complexity of a hybrid setup. Don't be. The real secret, the monitor side of the industry has finally caught up. They've added the speakers, they've added the remotes, and they've added the smart apps. You no longer have to compromise. But, and this is a big but, you have to be careful about the fine print. Before you click buy on any of these, check the warranty for your specific region. In the US, these companies are constantly changing their tune on burn-in. If a brand doesn't explicitly state 3-year burn-in protection in their listing, move on. Don't gamble with $1,000 of your hard-earned money. I've done the legwork for you. If you check the links in the description, those are the vetted sources I've personally checked. They go to the specific 2026 revisions of these models, not the older, dimmer 2024 versions that are still clogging up warehouse shelves. Using those links is the safe path to making sure you're not getting scammed by old inventory. Look, the TV as we know it is dying. It's being replaced by smarter, faster, and more versatile displays that actually respect your time and your eyesight. Whether you go with the Samsung or the MSI, you're moving into the future. If this deep dive helped you make a decision, or even if it just saved you from buying a monitor that would have been too dim for your room, hit that like button one last time. It really does help the channel. And if you're still undecided, watch this video right here where I compare OLED versus mini LED in a side-by-side torture test. I'll see you in the next